How well does the Sony Alpha R5 operate in low light and high ISOs? Join me in Bangkok's Chinatown tonight as we find out. So very good evening from Bangkok. I hope you can hear me amongst the chaos which is Bangkok's Chinatown. It's frenetic, it's crazy, it's beautifully lit up, and I think it's a perfect place to do a little bit of night street photography, and that's the plan for tonight. The idea is to take the Sony A7RV out with just one lens, in this case the 85mm f1.8, not the G Master, not the new one, not the expensive one. This is the budget one that you can sometimes find for around £350 on Amazon. Still a very good lens, I believe, and I want to test that out tonight. And I also want to test out the low light capabilities of the Alpha 7R5. 61 megapixels, some people say the low light capabilities are no good. I beg to differ, and the idea tonight is to try that out. I will shoot shutter priority, and I'm going to use auto ISO, literally allowing the auto ISO to control exposure up and down as we get different types of lights, different types of brightness in the scenes. That way I can just keep the aperture nailed at f1.8, keep the shutter speed around about f60 to do some more motion style effects stuff. But in general, I'll be keeping it around 1/60th of a second, just to make sure we've got everything sharp. The 85mm 1.8 does not have any image stabilization built into it, but of course the Sony Alpha 7R5 does, so that will be on, trying to give us a little bit of extra stability. So I'm going to crack on, the lights come down, I'm going to get the camera out and go and do some shooting, after which I'm going to have myself a nice Chinese meal. I'll catch you later.
So welcome back to Lightroom. As you can see, I've imported the images and I've actually picked out some of my favorites from the evening. We're going to have a little look through them, and I'm going to tell you some of my impressions and thoughts about each of the images that I've taken. At the beginning of the evening I made a bit of a mistake, and I had the settings, the ISO settings set wrong. I thought I was on auto ISO, but it turns out I was on 12,800. And that's quite interesting because it allows us to look at one of the higher levels of ISO on this camera to see just how good it is. So the first image I'm going to have a look at is this one here. Now if I slide in here, you can see this was shot at 12,800 ISO, 85mm lens, f1.8 and 1/3200th of a second. So odd sort of settings for this type of shot, but it's going to give us an interesting look at how bad the noise is. Now if I zoom in, you can see there is noise. Of course there's noise, it's 12,800, but that noise is a very, very uniform, and it's a very film-like noise. We've got a 61 megapixel sensor at 12,800 ISO, and that's a very, very usable image. You can see it's a little bit noisy in the shadow areas there, but overall, I mean, that's mightily impressive. If we go to the next image, this is actually a sequence of 3 images. This is the original image as shot. Again, 12,800 ISO. If we have a little look over here, 12,800 ISO, 85mm f1.8, 1/1320th of a second. And there's no editing done to this whatsoever. This is straight out of the camera. And again, if I zoom in, that is really nice. In these highlight areas you can see some noise, but again it's really, really uniform sort of noise, and it really actually looks quite film-like. In low light situations you tend to lose contrast at high ISOs, but this really has not happened in this image. If I go to the next one, This is actually a cropped and edited version of that previous image. And as you see, I can zoom in, that noise has become much more prominent because I've actually done quite a bit of editing to it, and I've zoomed in a fair amount, and you can see there's really prominent noise in there now. However, if I go to the next image, this image I ran through Lightroom's AI denoise tool, and if you zoom in, I am absolutely blown away, if I'm quite honest about it. This is 12,800 ISO, denoised by AI in Lightroom, and it is almost perfectly clean. It's a really good image. It looks it looks like an ISO 200 image, not an ISO 12,800 image. It's a very impressive looking image, and that would suggest that Lightroom's AI denoise works really well with these Sony files. So I'm going to go to the next one, and this is at the opposite end of the extreme. When I already discovered that I was shooting at 12,800, this went on to auto ISO, and there was plenty of light around. So this was shot at ISO 200, 85mm, f1.8 and 1/60th of a second. And you can see it's a lovely looking image. The tuk-tuk is actually moving. It's already passed over the crossing there, so there's a little bit of motion blur in it, but zooming in, it's a very clean image, and it was very easy to work with this image, which I did, and this is the result. I think a very striking image. It's a low ISO 61 megapixel image, oodles of detail. It's really smooth looking, colors absolutely pop, and I'm really impressed with it. The last image is one of my favorites, actually. I saw this young girl selling the fruit drinks in Chinatown. She had such a beautiful smile. I asked her if I could take her photo, and she was very happy for me to do that. This was shot at 2500 ISO, again 85mm, f5.6, just to give a little bit of depth to it, and 1/60th of a second. So you're looking at an ISO 2500 image. There's very little done to this in terms of editing. It's cropped in a little bit. There's no AI denoise actually done on this image, so this is pretty much as it is out of the camera. And if I zoom in, oh my god, the detail is absolutely fantastic. The lens is a beautiful lens, it has to be said. The 85mm budget lens, £350 when you can get it on sale. You can see every pore in her skin there. It's perhaps not quite nailed the eyes there, but I wasn't on eye autofocus, I was just on spot autofocus, so that's possibly quite acceptable for that. But loads of detail. If we look in the shadow areas here, very well controlled noise at ISO 2500. It looks really nice. So we'll come back and just have a look at all these images here. Overall impressions of my night in Chinatown. As a place to visit, it's a photographer's paradise. There's some great things to shoot, people, tuk-tuks, the colour, the energy. It's a fantastic place to go. My impressions of the Sony A7RV are, well, very impressed. A lot of people, as I suggested at the beginning of this video, say that high megapixel sensors are not good in low light. Well, as I said, I beg to differ, and I think these results prove it. Yes, at 12,800, if you edit heavily, get really ungainly looking noise. However, if you run it through Lightroom's AI denoise, you get an image that looks like an ISO 200. It doesn't lose any sharpness. It looks really good. Really happy with the camera, really happy with the results. I went out again last night, this is actually 2 days later, and shot some cityscape images, which I might talk about a little bit later in another video. But if you've got any questions about the images you see here, any questions about the Sony A7RV, or indeed any questions about photography or comments in general, drop them down below and I'll try my best to answer them. If you've enjoyed the video, obviously give me a like or a subscription, and I will see you in the next one.